So with only 2 weeks until the January transfer window opens, there is an abundance of transfer rumours currently going around the Championship, which we will be bringing to you guys in today's video. So what I'd like to know from you guys is, what are the areas that you think your club needs to strengthen in this upcoming January transfer window? And if you've seen any other transfer rumours that we didn't mention in today's video, let me know about them in the comments down below. And before we do get into anything, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at OneFootball. As always, their link will be in the top line of the description down below. Over on the OneFootball app, you can go ahead and read up on some of the latest transfer rumours currently going around the Championship. You can go ahead and follow your side on there, and so you can keep up to date with all the latest news going on around your club. And of course, we do have a lot of fixtures coming up around this festive period. You can go ahead and track all the games that are going on, because we've got a really hectic schedule over the next few weeks. But like I said, link in the top line of the description down below. And so without any further ado, let's just hop into these transfer rumours. So we'll start out with the bonkers transfer rumour currently going around the Championship. That is Erling Haaland, probably one of the most upcoming youngsters in world football, being linked with a move to Leeds United. Now, there is a little bit behind this link. Obviously, his father did play for Leeds United back in the 90s, and the player was actually born in Leeds, so there is a bit of a connection there with the club. Obviously, the chance to work under Bielsa and all that sort of stuff. If this ridiculous deal was to come off, and we have seen some mad players being linked with Leeds over the past few transfer rumours. I seem to remember Buffon and Totti off the top of my head being linked to the Championship, but if this one was to happen, it would be happening next summer if Leeds were to be promoted. Of course, their main rivals for this transfer are Manchester United, who seemingly are the favourites to land the youngster. He's got a ridiculous goal scoring record at the moment. Obviously, I'm sure everyone's aware of him, but he's been ripping it up in the Champions League this year. He's got 24 goals in all competitions. I don't think that this one will be happening in January. I don't think he'd be wanting to switch the Champions League for the Championship, but in the summer, if Leeds were to be promoted, who knows? It's unlikely, and he probably will end up at one of the European top clubs, but if not, and if he did want to get a little bit more game time and make that stepping stone move in his career, then maybe Leeds might be his destination. Another quite unrealistic one that I've seen Leeds being linked to lately has been Andre Ayew, the Swansea winger, who's done fairly well so far this season, 7 goals and 4 assists in the Championship. Leeds have been linked with a move. Obviously, Swansea and Leeds don't have the best track record with transfers happening in January for wingers, with the whole Daniel James fiasco that went on last season, but Ayew's the latest player to be linked in. I think I already sort of mentioned that Leeds weren't planning on doing much in this January transfer window. It's looking quite likely that Jack Clarke's going to be recalled from his loan move, and then he'll be sent out somewhere else on loan, so I could see them delving back into the loan market. But in terms of splashing a lot of money, I just can't see Leeds doing that in January. If they were serious about going in for Ayew, then they'd probably go and get him. You know, Swansea have shown that if you do offer the right money, then they'd be more than willing to sell over the past two transfer windows. But in terms of the realms of realism, I just can't see it happening. Probably the most realistic transfer that Leeds have been linked to at the moment is Andy RINOMHOTA, the Reading midfielder, as well as Daniel Ayala, who we mentioned a few videos ago. But the midfielder from Reading had a fantastic debut season last time, winning their Player of the Year award. It'd be interesting to see how much Reading would be holding out for this player. It might not be a bad move for Leeds if the money was right for this one. I see him as the sort of player that Bielsa could really mould into something, got a great engine on him. So far this season, he's probably not hit quite the same heights that he was last season, but even so, still a young player. At only 22, obviously Leeds see potential in him. Hull City fans probably expected this one to be coming, but Jarrod Bowen being linked to the Premier League, and Leicester City is the club who are seemingly the most interested in the player at the moment. And obviously, I want to see him staying in the Championship. I think that when he does make that move on, Leicester could be the perfect club for Jarrod Bowen. Obviously, Newcastle were heavily linked with him during the summer, but I think that in terms of a career mood for Bowen and Leicester, I think that could be a perfect fit. I see a lot of similarities between Bowen at the moment and Maddison in his final season at Norwich City, where he's just reaching a level now where he's just too good for the Championship. You know, that game where I went to at the KCOM when North End went to play Hull, he absolutely tore us apart for 90 minutes. One of the most lethal finishes in the Championship, with 15 goals and 4 assists so far this season for the winger. 22 years old, English. I think he'd be brilliant in that Leicester system, and I think he'd really fit into the ethos of the club there. I think he will go on to play for England one day. I think he's an absolute gem of a player, and the Hull City are no doubt going to get a lot of money for him because he's an absolute baller. But it will be sad to see him go, but I think that eventually it will only be right for him to move on for the sake of his career. It'll just be a question of if that's in January or in the summer. Sheffield Wednesday defender Morgan Fox has also been linked around the Championship, with his contract running out at the end of the season, with the current clubs interested said to be Forest, Blackburn, Derby and Huddersfield. From looking into the Wednesday fans' reaction from this one, Fox seems to be a player who splits their fan base's opinion, so I'll be interested to get some Wednesday fans' views on what they think they should do with Morgan Fox. For me, I think he's had a fairly solid season for them so far, actually, so I'm interested to see how that story develops. Our next transfer rumour involves Nottingham Forest and João Carvalho, who could be on his way out of the Championship, with Olympiacos said to be interested in the playmaker. Now, so far this season, he's not really played all too much football. Only 7 starts for Forest so far this season, 7 of them off the bench, just the 1 goal and and 1 assist for him so far this season. It's been a bit of a frustrating one so far. When he first burst onto the scene last season after his £13 million move in the summer, I thought he was absolutely brilliant to start things off with. He was really lighting things up in the Championship, but then his form started to tail off a little bit. Martin O'Neill then came in. He didn't really fit into that system. Even so far this season, he's not really been deployed in his natural position, that number 10. He's only made 3 starts in that position so far this season, mostly being used out wide. And it's a difficult one with Carvalho because obviously everyone's expectations of him are so high because of the money that was paid for him. And on his day, probably is one of the best, if not the best players in that Forest squad in terms of their technical ability and the ability to create something from nothing. But are Forest seeing that enough so far this season to justify that price tag, or are they not playing to his strengths? It's a tough one to weigh up for me. I would be very interested to get Forest fans' opinions on João Carvalho and whether you'd let him go in January and whether you'd like to see sort of that money reinvested into another area of the squad, or whether you persist with Carvalho because you still think he can offer something. Liverpool youngster Ryan Brewster has been linked with the move to the Championship as well, with the striker looking to get a bit of experience. With Preston, Swansea and Sheffield Wednesday as well as a couple of others also to be interested in the striker. Obviously currently playing for the England under-21, said to have a lot of potential. Obviously we've seen the likes of Tammy Abraham come to the Championship and rip it up before. On loan for the rest of the season, I don't think that would be a bad deal for any of those sides. In January, I do think that striker will be a priority position for North End. Eamon Brophy is another player who Preston have been linked to. He has worked with Alex Neil in the past from his time at Hamilton. Rangers are also said to be interested in the Kilmarnock striker. Since making his move there in his first 2 seasons, scored 20 goals this season, has struggled a little bit more to find the back of the net with only 4 goals so far this season, but is a player who can either play out wide or up front. And I think that Preston at the moment, we do sort of lack options for out-and-out strikers, with David Nugent and Jane Stockley being not only 2 real out-and-out strikers at the moment, with Louis Moult out for the foreseeable future and Shirley Maguire and Tom Barcusa mostly being used as wide men. The 23-year-old's only got 18 months in his contract at Kilmarnock, and so it's a deal that I could see North End pulling off. It's a sort of play that we'd usually go in for. Johnson Clarke-Harris at Bristol Rovers, another striker that North End have been linked to over the past couple of months. So far this season done well for them in League One, scoring 10 goals so far this season. Middlesbrough have been highly linked to Peterborough playmaker Marcus Maddison. I've been baffled that no one's come in for him sooner really, but 9 goals, 6 assists so far this season in League One, with Peterborough being the highest scoring side in League One currently. Maddison is a major player in that, and Middlesbrough lately I think really have been lacking that creative spark. They've been lacking that for a few seasons actually. I think that Maddison will do a really good job in there. I think he's got a buyout clause of 2.5 million, so it's just a question of if Middlesbrough actually have that money to go and spend in January. Perhaps a transfer that would fund it would be Darren Randolph leaving. There have been a few rumours that he may be heading towards the exit door in January, with his former club West Ham said to be interested. I find this one a bit of a weird one. I mean, West Ham at the moment, obviously Fabianski being out injured, looks to be in the market for a goalkeeper in January. If he was to make the move back there, will he then be happy though to be sitting on the bench when Fabianski gets back into the starting 11? I'm not so sure. I don't think the Borough fans would begrudge Randolph for actually moving on though. You know, he's probably been their most consistent player since coming in. He's been a brilliant servant to the club. Another one to keep your eye on to see how that one develops. Perhaps a goalkeeper that they will go into to replace Darren Randolph will be Wes Fotheringham, with Birmingham also said to be interested in the Rangers goalkeeper. Not played ultimate football so far this season, was their number 1 a few years ago, but since the return of Alan McGregor, he's mostly been their number 2. A decent goalkeeper on the ball. I'd like to see what we can do in the Championship. As a North End fan, I've got quite a few memories of Wes Fotheringham. I remember a few years ago him being substituted by Swindon manager at the time, Paolo Di Canio, after about 20 minutes or so. He's also obviously the goalkeeper for the playoff final when North End went to get promoted as well, but I'd like to see him in the Championship. Could be an interesting one. Derby County fullback Jim Bogle has been linked with a move to AC Milan. Not sure how too much is in that one really. I think a move to the Premier League would be a little bit more realistic. I think that Burnley are one of the clubs who have been interested. Bogle probably been one of the few Derby players who can actually hold their head up high so far this season. I think he's been a decent performer for them. 3 assists from fullback so far this season. 19 years old, still one of the best prospects in the Championship. Will certainly go on to play in the Premier League one day. It's clear that Bristol City are in the market for a striker this January, and one of the names that has been mentioned has been Connor Wickham. I'm sure that Connor Wickham is linked to the Championship every season, but he somehow just ends up on Crystal Palace's bench every season. But not a player who's played a lot of football over the last few seasons, only 11 matches in the last 3 seasons for Palace. Obviously a player who has massively struggled with injuries. I'd like to see him making that move back to the Championship, and it is a position where Bristol City do need to improve. Lyle Taylor, another striker who's been linked around the Championship at the moment. 5 goals in 9 appearances so far this season, just getting back into the Charlton starting 11 after that injury setback he had. I'm sure that Charlton fans were expecting this one. He was heavily linked with a move away in the summer. Currently the clubs that to be interested are Bristol City, Rangers, Burnley, Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest and Brentford. Stoke are apparently open to offers for midfield duo Peter Etebo and Ndai in January as well. I'd probably say they're two best players, but in the midst of a relegation battle, O'Neill obviously wants a certain type of player around the club at the moment, and those two probably would be the most valuable assets in the club at the moment. So to raise any sort of funds, it probably would be those two looking towards the exit door. I think we've seen Besiktas being linked with Etebo so far. I saw Aston Villa being linked with Millwall winger Jed Wallace, which I found to be a bit of an interesting one. Obviously having a cracking season for them so far, really is their player on form at the moment with 8 goals and 6 assists so far this season. I believe his contract is up at the end of the season as well. Millwall will be hoping to tie him down to a new one, or may risk losing him for a cheap deal in January. And Bristol City attacking midfielder Sammy Smosix is being linked with a January move to both Huddersfield Town and Hull City after, I mean, he's not really played any football so far at Bristol City. A few people had quite high expectations of him after making the move in the summer, but after only 1 start and 2 appearances from the bench, he's not really set the world alight at Bristol City so far. But guys, they have it. There are some of the latest transfer rumours which I have seen going around the Championship, so if there are any others which we didn't mention in today's video, make sure to get them in the comments down below and we'll give them a mention in the next video. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Make sure you subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.